The Supreme Court of the United States stands as the nation's highest court, a symbol of justice and authority at the very top of the American legal system. Its imposing marble columns and historic halls have witnessed some of the most consequential decisions in the country's history. As the final authority on American law, the Supreme Court's rulings are binding and shape the legal landscape for generations. The court is made up of 9 justices, each appointed for life by the President and confirmed by the Senate. This lifetime tenure is designed to insulate them from political pressures, allowing them to make decisions based on the law and the Constitution, rather than shifting political winds. Their primary responsibility is to interpret the Constitution and ensure that all laws and government actions are consistent with its principles. This power of judicial review allows the court to strike down laws or executive actions that violate constitutional rights. When the Supreme Court issues a ruling, its decisions set binding precedent for all lower courts across the country, shaping how laws are applied and understood. The court hears only a small fraction of the thousands of cases petitioned each year, focusing on major constitutional questions or when lower courts are divided on an issue. This selectivity means that each case the court takes on has the potential to make a significant impact. Many of these cases involve complex and often controversial issues, ranging from civil rights and liberties to the limits of government power, and even questions about the very structure of American democracy. The justices carefully review written briefs submitted by both sides, listen to oral arguments presented by attorneys, and then meet privately to discuss the merits of each case before casting their votes. A simple majority of the justices determines the outcome, and one justice is chosen to write the majority opinion, which explains the legal reasoning behind the decision and guides future courts. Justices who disagree with the majority can write dissenting opinions, offering alternative interpretations and sometimes shaping future legal thinking. These written opinions, both majority and dissenting, become part of the nation's legal record, shaping future debates and clarifying the boundaries of American rights and freedoms for generations to come. The Supreme Court serves as a crucial check on the powers of Congress and the President, ensuring that all branches of government operate within the limits set by the Constitution. While justices strive for impartiality, their individual philosophies and interpretations of the law can influence outcomes, making the court's composition and the nomination process a subject of intense national debate and public interest. Understanding the Supreme Court's unique role is essential to understanding how American democracy functions and how the rights of citizens are protected. The court's decisions can resolve long-standing national disputes, define the scope of individual rights, and even change the course of history. The influence of the Supreme Court extends into every corner of American life, affecting how people live, work, and interact with their government. Each new justice who joins the court can shift its ideological balance, potentially altering the direction of future rulings and the interpretation of the Constitution. The court's enduring authority and independence are central to the rule of law in the United States, providing stability and continuity even in times of political change. Its legacy is built on interpreting, not creating, the law, ensuring that justice is applied fairly and consistently across the nation. In the end, the Supreme Court's word is, quite literally, the final word in American law, shaping the nation's future with every decision it makes. The Second Amendment is one of the most debated parts of the Bill of Rights. Its single sentence about a well-regulated militia and the right of the people to keep and bear arms has sparked centuries of argument. Some see it as protecting an individual's right to own guns for self-defense. Others believe it's tied to service in a state militia. This debate shapes laws, politics, and public safety across the country. For many, gun ownership is a symbol of liberty. For others, it's a source of violence and tragedy. Every new law or court ruling on firearms becomes a national event. The meaning of these 27 words continues to shape American society. For much of American history, the Supreme Court rarely addressed the Second Amendment, leaving its interpretation largely to lower courts and legal scholars. In 1939, United States v. Miller upheld a federal law restricting sawed-off shotguns, suggesting the right was tied to militia service. This case set a precedent that would influence gun rights debates for decades. For decades after, the court stayed silent, leaving lower courts to interpret the amendment. This silence created a patchwork of rulings and interpretations across the country. That changed in 2008 with District of Columbia versus Heller, where the court ruled the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to possess firearms for lawful purposes, like self-defense at home. This landmark decision redefined the legal landscape. Heller struck down a handgun ban in Washington, D.C., and established the individual rights view. This ruling was a significant shift from previous interpretations. In 2010, McDonald versus City of Chicago extended this right to state and local governments, ensuring that the Second Amendment applied nationwide. These cases affirmed an individual right but allowed for some regulation. The court acknowledged that certain restrictions could still be deemed constitutional. After Heller and McDonald, legal challenges to gun laws surged, but the Supreme Court mostly stayed out, leading to inconsistent rulings nationwide. This inconsistency created confusion and debate over the extent of gun rights. It wasn't until 2022, with New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, that the court revisited the issue. This case once again brought the Second Amendment into the national spotlight. The legal landscape for gun rights remains in flux, with ongoing debates and future cases likely to shape the interpretation of the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court's recent decision in United States versus Rahimi has once again put gun rights and public safety at the center of national attention, sparking conversations across the country. This pivotal case challenged a federal law that bars individuals under domestic violence, restraining orders from possessing firearms, raising questions about the balance between constitutional rights and the need to protect vulnerable people. In a significant ruling, the court upheld the law, affirming that the government can temporarily disarm those found by a court to pose a credible threat to the safety of others, especially in cases involving domestic violence. The majority opinion, authored by Chief Justice Roberts, pointed to a long-standing historical tradition of disarming individuals considered dangerous, emphasizing the importance of public safety in the court's reasoning. The case centered on Zaki Rahimi, a man who not only violated a restraining order, but was also implicated in multiple shootings, highlighting the real-world stakes of such legal decisions. The decision reflected a broad consensus among the justices, who, despite their differing judicial philosophies, agreed on the need for certain limits to protect the public. However, Justice Clarence Thomas dissented, arguing that there was no clear historical precedent for such a restriction, and warning against expanding government power without strong constitutional grounding. The ruling signals the court's willingness to recognize limits on gun rights, especially when public safety is at risk, and may influence future cases involving the Second Amendment. Ultimately, this decision marks a significant moment in the ongoing debate over the scope of the Second Amendment and how America balances individual rights with collective security. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that the Second Amendment is not absolute. The majority found that disarming those deemed dangerous has deep historical roots. The law targeting those under domestic violence restraining orders fits this tradition. Some justices wrote concurring opinions suggesting courts should consider modern public safety, not just historical analogs. Justice Clarence Thomas dissented, insisting the government failed to show a direct historical match for the law. He warned the decision could open the door to broader gun restrictions. The core disagreement: should courts require a near-identical historical law, or is a broader principle enough? The majority sees the law as a modern application of an old idea. Thomas demands strict historical evidence. This debate over history and interpretation will shape future Second Amendment cases. The court's divisions reflect the nation's ongoing struggle over gun rights. For gun rights advocates, Rahimi was a setback. The court upheld a restriction they opposed. Some worry it sets a precedent for more limits based on civil, not criminal findings. Yet the court left core gun rights decisions like Heller and Bruin intact, focusing narrowly on domestic abusers. For gun safety advocates, the ruling was a relief, affirming that the government can act to protect the public from proven threats. The decision shows that even under strict historical tests, some modern gun regulations can survive. It offers hope that laws like red flag statutes might also be upheld. The ruling suggests the court may balance history with public safety in future cases. The debate over the Second Amendment is far from settled. The Rahimi decision sparked strong reactions nationwide. The Biden administration and gun safety groups praised the ruling as a victory for public safety. They argued it protects victims of domestic violence and reflects common sense. Gun rights groups, including the NRA, condemned the decision, warning it erodes Second Amendment protections and sets a dangerous precedent. Critics fear it allows rights to be stripped without a criminal conviction. Supporters see it as a necessary safeguard for vulnerable people. The public remains deeply divided, with passionate arguments on both sides. The ruling highlights how gun rights are woven into America's political and cultural fabric. The Supreme Court's Rahimi ruling keeps the federal law on domestic violence and guns in place, but it leaves many questions about gun rights unresolved. Future battles will focus on red flag laws and bans on certain firearms. Courts must now decide if these laws fit within the nation's historical tradition, as required by recent Supreme Court decisions. Some justices suggest a more flexible approach may be needed. The fight over the Second Amendment will continue in courts and politics. Rahimi shows the court is open to some gun restrictions, especially for public safety. The challenge remains, balancing constitutional rights with the need to protect Americans.